Why we're running if competition among family hatches is fierce. So we have 6 months to find out if the new Honda Civic is up to the task. Month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4. Specs: life with the Honda Civic. Month 4. Tire pressure: japes with the Civic. The 18th of October 2017. The Civic's let me down. Well, sort of, and not, I should add, in any major way. Rather, the tire pressure warning light pinged on just as I joined the M25. It prompted a slow 40-mile trudge to the next service station, where the tire gauge then showed nothing to be wrong. The light has subsequently gone out of its own, pardon the pun accord. Mileage 3,185. Getting to grips with the Civic's design. The 20th of September 2017. Like a load. The look of our Civic's edgy styling, the car certainly has its benefits in other areas. I've mentioned before how the lower stance has improved its dynamics and how the sporty driving position ups the feel-good factor inside. So does the steering. It's well weighted and geared with a variable ratio, in fact, but not done so sharply that you'd notice at a quick 2.14 turns from lock to lock, despite which its turning circle is a respectable 11 meters. I approve of that and also of its handling, which borders on fun, and if its road holding is no better than you might expect of a car wearing Michelin Primacy 3 tires, even in such a generous size as our 23,545 R17s, at least the whole driving experience feels like it's been engineered by someone who gives a damn. First go in the new at Honda PR Civic last night. Easy to see why it got 4 stars from Atwaka. Good to drive and huge boot space. Pic.twitter.com State TV Siegter, Darren Moss at Darren_Moss June 23, 2017. However, some aspects of the new Civic's design are a little overdone. For example, it has a novel rear parcel shelf. It's basically a thin sheet of fabric that can, like a roller blind, be pulled out from one end and then hooked into place at the other, or tucked away completely to provide unhindered access to the boot. You can even remove the cartridge that holds the rolled-up shelf. This is good, as it looks flash in the showroom and is a dazzlingly simple idea. Only thing is, it's not strong enough to hold anything. It presumably is not very effective at stopping any noise penetrating into the interior either, although it will at least hide some of your valuables out of sight in the boot. Don't worry, though, overall, our Civic is standing up well to its short-distance commutes and high-speed thrashings, as well as large and indivisible loads in the boot and heavy-handed teenagers in the interior. There are 1 or 2 scuffs on the cheaper-looking fabrics that don't seem to have brushed out quite as easily as we'd have liked, but, overall, the quality of the interior plastics, many and varied as they are, is impressive. Added to that, all the switches feel plush and work well, the ergonomics are first-rate and the steering wheel feels good. The panel gaps, large and, occasionally uneven, I'm not so sure about. But I'm not unduly fussed. The Civic is one of the most reliable cars in its class, and that in itself is probably a better sign of quality. Mileage 2,995. Back to the top. Life with the Honda Civic. Month 3. First world problems with the Civic. The 23rd of August 2017. It's a pleasure to drive this Civic. The driving position is spot on and there's lots of room for tall drivers. Rear passengers get plenty of legroom, too, but the swoopy profile restricts headroom for anyone over 6 foot. That's not a problem for my daughters, for whom, after several months in a Vauxhall Astra equipped with OnStar, the only thing lacking is an in-car Wi-Fi hotspot. Mileage 2,895. A few telling creaks in the Civic's armor. The 16th of August 2017. It's good, this Civic, very good. I like it at least as much as I do the equivalent VW Golf or Audi A3. Now, I would be tempted to end this report there were I not professionally obliged to report on all the things, good or bad, that I might dig up during my tenure of this car. So I'm afraid I'll have to list some faults that I don't think will contradict my opening statement. If I wholeheartedly recommend this Civic as a car to drive and to own, it has been trouble-free so far. Unsurprisingly, I have to point out an area in which it disappoints considerably. The infotainment system is terrible. It's not just the 7.0 inches screen, prone to picking up glare. It's not just the inadequacies of the touchscreen, which often needs a second prod before stirring itself into dreadfully slow action, or the shortcut icons down one side of it, hard to locate and hit, or the awful Fisher-Price graphics. No, the single worst thing is the utterly unintuitive nature of its operation. More than once, I've lost the screen that lists your radio station options, and it has taken me days to find it again. I'm still not sure how I did it. All I know is the misery of being subjected to someone else's choice of station for days. To be honest, finding things within the sub-menus is such a faff that I no longer bother. I can find the info screen that tells me how many miles per gallon I'm doing over the course of a journey, and I have learnt how to program the sat-nav. That's relatively easy. The only good thing I can say about it is it's slightly better in its responses than I remember the similar setup being in my Honda Jazz long-term test car. Don't worry, though. Unlike the Jazz, the rest of this car's great. I wish it were a fraction more economical, but that is perhaps an inevitable result of having a fairly weeny 1.0-litre engine in a largish car. Drive it with any vigor and you'll see as low as 25 mpg. However, overall I'm getting 38.6 mpg, and on one 60-mile journey from Surrey to Kent via a traffic-laden M25 it achieved 47.1 mpg. I now have just enough space left to tell you that the door mirrors don't automatically fold in when you stop, and the positioning of the sockets for mobile devices annoys me. Oh, and a wine bottle in the central bin gets in the way of your gear-changing arm. Mileage 2,495. True eco-benefit. Amelia on the 9th of August 2017. The Civic has one of those icon buttons that, as far as I can work out, does absolutely nothing other than illuminate an icon on the instrument panel. I'm told that it actually softens the throttle response and limits the aircon to achieve better fuel economy, but my figures seem to be the same whether the button is on or not. I'm averaging a reasonable 38.6 mpg overall. Mileage 2,250. Back to the top life with a Honda Civic month 2 proving to be the perfect turbonite. The 26th of July 2017. The Civic is agile, easy to drive and a useful tool in the urban nip and tuck, as a recent trip to central London proved. But when it came to parking in a tight space on a Kensington street, I was glad that our car has a standard issue rear-view camera, because that swooping roofline and the bar that dissects the back window delimit its rear visibility. Mileage 1995. The Civic's beauty is in the eyes of its beholder. The 5th of July 2017. The Civic is proving popular here. The older people in the office want to borrow it for its practicality and fuel economy, 40 mpg plus on longer runs, and the younger ones because it looks a little bit like the Type R. In fact, opinion is divided pretty much 5,050 on the question of the car's looks. I freely admit to being a convert. When I first saw it, I thought it was so ugly that it made me weep, but I've grown to like our car's fruity red bodywork and menacing black alloy wheels, and I love the length of its wheelbase and how low the car is, two factors that must contribute towards its impressive dynamics. What has caused most people to reel in surprise is when they're told that underneath its bonnet is a mere 1.0-litre 3-cylinder engine. Seems I'm not the only fan of the new Civic. Pic.twitter.com. Fayoak, Mark Pearson at Mark Gearson. July 26, 2017. Now, that engine has me a little divided. There is a characteristic offbeat burble at low speed that could perhaps be a little less intrusive, but to a generation brought up on the unseemly low-speed clatter of most diesels, I guess it's barely noticeable. If I were uncharitable, I could say the engine noise is drowned out at higher speeds by the road noise anyway. On top of that, the car never feels as quick as its 127 bhp suggests. Part of the blame must go to the car's curb weight. The new Civic actually weighs slightly more than the old one, and part to the illusion created by the power delivery being so linear, with no perceived step up and go. I must admit I still prefer my engines with as many cylinders as possible, preferably with a multiple of 6 rather than a division of that number. However, because I like everything else about this Civic so far, and as I'm viewing a red car through rosette-tinted spectacles, I could still be converted. Mileage 1250. Back to the top life with the Honda Civic month 1 welcoming the Honda Civic to our fleet. The 14th of June 2017. Bewilderment bordering on consternation has been my colleagues' reaction here to my decision to replace my largely unloved Honda Jazz long-termer with a Honda Civic. Why, they pondered, risk a further calamity with another car that hasn't been known for offering much in the way of dynamic involvement or driving pleasure. I see what they mean, but I disagree. You see, if you cast your mind back to the days before penicillin, you might be surprised to find that the humble Honda Civic used to cause quite a stir among keen motorists. This was, I should add, nothing to do with the ferociously quick Type R variants that were to add such a sporting flourish to the later incarnations, but more to do with the engineering flair and clever thinking that these eminently sensible family hatchbacks have always displayed beneath their inoffensive exteriors. The same goes for the Civic saloons, coupes, estates and MPVs. The Civic having always been nothing if not versatile. More often than not they showed up their contemporaneous rivals for the dullards they usually were. It all started with the very first Civic, which was launched in 1972 and by 1975 had an engine, the admirable CVCC, producing such low emissions that it shook the entire US motor industry to the core and continued in a double wishbone frenzy right up until Honda produced a spacious but distinctly unsexy MPV-style model when the Civic reached its 7th generation in the year 2000. This version dispensed with a neat double wishbone front suspension, its successor introducing a torsion beam rear axle into the equation, from which point the car, despite its sporting variants and its quirky styling touches, was never quite the same again. What is now the 10th Gen Civic is now completely new, longer, lower, wider and stiffer than the car it replaces, with an all-new platform, fully independent rear suspension and the promise, with help from its new turbocharged engines, of bringing back some dynamic finesse. And then there's the styling, my word, the styling. Consigned to history as the unorthodox and slightly divisive look of the past 2 generations, to be replaced by something that's, unorthodox and slightly divisive. If this new one is not exactly handsome, or even cohesive, it at least has an energy to its busy lines that warrants your attention. It brings to mind the designer Raymond Loewy's maxim that to sell something familiar you must make it surprising, and to sell something surprising make it familiar. More to the point, though, I think as a result of all these changes it's now possible for a keen motorist to get a little worked up by a Civic all over again, and that's why I've chosen to run one. The one I've actually snapped up for our long-term fleet is a 1.0 VTEC senior version. Our early drives of the Civic indicated that this new 127 bhp 1.0-litre turbocharged triple had the edge on the more powerful 1.5-litre 4 when it came to driver appeal. On paper, performance seems respectable, if not exactly thrilling, for something with such a small engine capacity, with 0.62 mph listed at 10.9 secs and a top speed of 127 miles per hour. More impressive, perhaps, are its official 55.4 mpg and its respectable CO2 emissions of 117 gkm. My new long-term car has very cool door mirrors. pic.twitter.com/4HHLRCZ, Mark Pearson at Mark Gearson, April 29, 2017. Any doubts about the Civic's more dynamic intent are soon dispelled by a quick glance at its meaty tires. Lurking under those curious arches are 23,545 R17 gumballs, wider than a Type R would have worn a few years back and now biting the tarmac beneath what is essentially a family hatchback with an engine the size of a handkerchief. I like its sense of purpose, especially on those black alloys. We like the look of our senior trim, too. All Honda Civics are well equipped, it has to be said, with standard features including advanced active safety technology that includes automatic city emergency braking, but our trim adds auto wipers, dual zone climate control and a rear view camera to what is already a long list of goodies. Hop in and first impressions are good. The car itself is delightfully low, noticeably lower than a Volkswagen Golf or a Ford Focus. The new interior is more conventional than before, and all the better for it. Gone is the confusing dual-level dash, replaced by an instrument cluster that's easier on the eye and more logically laid out. The driving position is lower, too, and it's easy to find the right setup, even if it's a lever, rather than a more precise rotary knob that adjusts the seat back angle. It's roomy, at least up front, though whether that sloping roofline robs it of some rear headroom is something I'll have to report back on once it's been occupied. The boot looks positively cavernous. If the Jazz left me indifferent, first impressions of this Civic car, by contrast, favorable. The Thromy triple, with its linear power delivery, flat torque curve and a redline set at a surprisingly modest for Honda 5,500 revolutions per minute, pushes the Civic around with languid ease, and the steering's precise and the gear change is exquisite. My colleague's bewilderment be damned. I'm looking forward to the next 6 months in the Civic. Honda Civic 1.0 VTEC Senior Specification Specs Price New £20,340 Price as Tested £20,340 Options Non-Test Data Engine 3CYLS, 988cc, Turbocharged Petrol Power 127 bhp at 5,500 revolutions per minute Torque 147 pounds-feet at 2,250 revolutions per minute Top speed 126 miles per hour 0.62 mph 10.9 sec Claimed fuel economy 55.4 mpg Test fuel economy 38.6 mpg Code 2 117 gkm Faults none Expenses none Back to the top.